Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Josh. Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here with you. And just so happy and feeling sort of the gravity, the groundedness that this gathering has provided for the last couple of years. Um, I don't know if you drop in or, or if you're someone who comes regularly, or comes once in a while, there's this feeling of gravity that can pull us back to this gathering together, this opportunity that we provide each other to sit. So I'm going to just start with the Parsha today. It's Parshat Baha'alotcha, and it tells the story of the Israelites' journey from Mount Sinai to Canaan, to the Promised Land. So they're just beginning. They're getting ready and just about to go, because it begins with this completing of the dedication of the Mishkan by finally, after all this building and building and the moments of revelation at Sinai and all of that, it begins by lighting the menorah. So let me just share this first couple of verses of the Parsha with you, because I think they have a lot to say that is useful. I have found useful for my own mindfulness practice, and maybe you will too. So it starts, Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, Daber el Aharon ve'amarta elav, beha'alotecha, et hanerot el mul penei hamenorah, ya'iru shiv'at hanerot, vaya'as ken Aharon. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and say to him, when you light up the lamps, opposite the front of the lampstand, shall the 7 lamps give light. And thus Aaron did. So I'm going to just stop there, because there's a lot. I'll start with a commentary from Rashi. So immediately after, so God talks to Moses. Moses is told to tell Aaron, when you light the lamps. And immediately following that verse giving the directions, Bahalotecha, go up and light the lamps. The very next verse says, Vaya'as ken, and Aaron did so. So Rashi comments on that phrase, Vaya'as ken, and Rashi says, Shelo shina, meaning that he didn't change anything. Lo, didn't, shina, change anything. And Rashi's praising Aaron for not changing anything in these precise literal instructions that he had just been given. And remember, I think Rashi's noticing this sort of what we would call the game of telephone, from God to Moses to Aaron. And you may know in your own experience how easily things can get changed from one to the other to the other. So anyway, Rashi says, Shelo shina. He's praised because he didn't change anything. Now the root of that word, shina, shin nun he, has 2 meanings that we often are reminded of at the High Holy Days, but we get to do it right now here in this Parsha. And that first root, which Rashi was talking about, was to change. Aaron did not change anything from the instructions. And this brings me to my own mindfulness practice, where I'm invited to show up again and again, to stick with my intention to practice in some way, even as I am constantly changing. I'm invited to show up regularly, maybe in the same seat, maybe at the same time. And sometimes I'm helped in that practice by communities like this one that provide that gravity of, let's convene at this time, let's do it now, and hold that space for each other. But this is also the root, shin nun he, for repeat. So change and repeat. The Hasidic master the Rabbi Mordechai Yosef Leiner, also known as the Ishbitzer, uses that other meaning when he said that Aaron did not merely repeat his actions, like he didn't do them as if by rote in a mindless, dead way. But instead, the Ishbitzer said that Aaron would always perform the mitzvah of lighting the lamps as if for the first time, like something new, something to be done with energy and joy. So I don't know about you, but before I sit, both of these things show up. Like, oh, really? I have to sit? I'm sure I have more important things to do right now. And can I find the part of me that remembers, like, oh yes, let me do this with as if it's new, with energy and joy. So in this way, we begin to light the lamp of awareness. We light the lamp, we let the lamp give light. What shows up when we sit, and we let it shine on whatever is in front of us. Whatever is in my mind, whatever is being known by my body. And in tough times like right now, we can shine a light on our wholeness and our brokenness, on the wholeness and the brokenness of this world, the war, the hunger, the violence, the justice, the lack of justice, but also on life and birth and love and hope. The light of awareness shines with compassion, only shining on as much truth as we can bear. We get to stay within our window of tolerance while making room for what is true. So imagine that light, these lights. How far does the light shine? How far forward? How strong is that light? And it turns out we have some agency over that light. I can bring compassion to the parts of me that are having difficulty and make room for them in this light of awareness without them needing to change at all. Knowing that I am caring, knowing that you are caring, knowing that we are carrying both the whole and the broken tablet all the time. So repeat is what we do in mindfulness practice. We sit again and again. We focus the mind, use something as an anchor for our attention, often the breath, maybe your feeling of your feet on the floor, and we let our thoughts settle a bit. We let the thoughts drop down into the body so we can begin to see and understand the contents and processes of our own mind. What is going on up there? And it turns out we need to do this many times to begin to understand and know our own habits of thought. To see, oh yeah, here, I'm doing that thing that I do again. So here's one of the things that I do. I'm sitting at this desk, and you can't see it, but there's some piles of paper on here. And when I sit down and I have a particular job I need to do, I notice that the urge to clean my desk shows up instead of doing the work at hand. I see you know this feeling. You do. How many times have I done that in my life? Before I begin to see the pattern and think that, oh, this work is going to be hard. It's going to be boring. I'm worried what people will think of it. This email I'm going to write, or this other thing I'm going to, and the next thing I know, that thought pops up. It is insistent. Oh boy, do I have to clean my desk first. I really need to clean my desk first. Now, cleaning and organizing is a fine thing, and it is certainly worth doing. But I get to notice how that thought becomes insistent as if it is the most important thing, when the thing I intended to do, whatever work it was, is actually bringing up feelings of anxiety and worry and doubt, and it steals my attention. It takes the light of awareness away from my attention, turns it in some other direction. Nothing to see over here, turn over here. It puts out the lamp, or it jumps up and down and just says, look over here. So we show up again and again. We light the lamps of awareness and start to see, oh, there's that thought about cleaning my desk coming up again. I don't actually need to do that. I can set that aside and direct my attention to the place I meant to originally. So when we come back to sit again and again and cultivate this muscle of attention, redirecting that attention again and again, and we begin to strengthen that muscle of attention, we become more nimble with our attention, bringing more choice and agency to where I'm actually going to direct it. And with compassion, we cultivate our ability to hold more and more of reality in that light. Now, the verse talks about the lights shining forward at the front of the lampstand. They were facing forward and casting light on the altar and the table where the showbread was situated in front of the menorah. But there were also something found, a menorah found, a ceramic lamp excavated from the shrine at Dan in Israel, dating back to the first temple period, where the lights are shaped differently. They're circular, with spouts for wicks projecting in all directions. And I really love that, knowing that. So yes, I want to see what's in front of me. But once we get better at focusing and steadying the attention on our breath or whatever anchor we're using, we can allow our own habits of perception to release. I can allow that I got to clean my desk thought. I can allow that to release. And I can allow the light of awareness to shine in all directions, including the wholeness. And it can also shine on the brokenness as I cultivate and strengthen my ability to hold everything that's real in my awareness, what is comforting and calming, and what is also difficult. So I invite you to sit with me, find your seat, make any adjustments. I'm going to make one. I'm going to put this phone that was ringing and out of the room. I invite you to set aside anything that might distract you for the next 10, 12 minutes or so. And notice how you're sitting. Make any adjustments that you need to sit in a way that is both relaxed and alert. Are you repeating? Is it a way that you've done before, or do you need to change? Both are good. Doing things precisely the same, or doing it new each time. It's not one or the other. With practice, we get to see how that works. When is it good to change, to do something as if for the first time again? Or when is that simply restlessness? Good to notice the groundedness of repetition? Or when is it a constricting or maybe even destructive pattern? So just notice, here you are in your seat again. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel the sits bones heavy in the chair. And maybe take your upper torso, make your torso, just take it in a tiny, tiny circle. Doesn't matter which direction. And just notice when you get to the spot where the shoulders are right above the hips, and you feel that a little bit of balance, where it's so easy to sit upright, dignified, alert, with the least amount of effort. And let your thoughts drop into the body. Notice if there's any part of the body that has a strong sensation, or a holding on, or a tightness. See if you can allow that to relax to the best of your ability. And then bring your attention to the breath or to the feeling of your feet on the floor. Shine the lamp of awareness on the breath or whichever anchor you're using. Here's the inhale and the exhale. And the transition from one to the other. Bringing your awareness to this breath, as if for the first time, as if it's the most interesting thing. And every time the mind begins to wander, it is so good to know that all you ever have to do is very gently bring your awareness, bring your attention back to the feeling of the breath. There's nothing to do, nothing to fix, nothing to create, nothing to solve. Just bringing enough energy to this feeling of the breath to keep it in the forefront of your attention, allowing all other sensations, sounds, thoughts to rest in the background. Let the lamp of awareness shine on this breath, on every part of the breathing process. And every time the mind begins to wander, all you ever need to do is very gently bring the attention back to the breath. And if you like, give the heart and mind permission to fall gently and totally open in the light of the lamp of awareness. Maybe allow that light to shine a little farther, to include a little more. As the heart and mind simply fall open, reuniting with the natural openness that's already here. So just before we move on, take a moment to think about what that was like for you. Maybe remember that lamp, that light shining. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everybody. Invite you to stick around to share your experience and any questions. Always have a really lively conversation afterwards in the chat. And before we do that, if you'd like to join us, anyone who is saying Kaddish today, I want to give you a chance to do that. You can put the name of anyone that you're holding in mind or heart as you recite Kaddish today in the chat. And we'll put the text on and invite you to unmute if you'd like to and join me in reciting Kaddish. Yitgadal, Yitgadash, Shmei Rabbah,
Yitgadash,
Shema
Shmei Ve'alad Divrah Hiroteh, Yanik Mahoteh,
Vayechon
Echon
V'Yehei
U'Mehechon,
B'Chol Beit
Vayede
Yisrael,
Kol Beit
Bizman Kariv V'Imru Amen.
Amen.
Shmei
Rabba
Rabbah,
Mevorach Leolam
Rabba,
Leolam
Amen.
Amen.
Baruch
Barak
Shabbat
Yitztabach,
B'Tzadik
Barak Yitraman B'Naseh, Adar, Vitalef, Vitala, Medicuch, Abriku, Alami Kol, Veritash, Vushakata Venekata, Daimaran, Bilma, Vimru, Ami, Amin, Maya, Bakaim Alino, Vyankolis, Raya, Ru, Amin, Rosu, Shalom, Yama, Huya, Sino, Vyankolis, Raya, Vimru, Amin.
Amen. Israel, we love. Amen.
Hey, if you are leaving us now, we wish you Teitchem l'shalom, to go in peace and come back to us when you can. We'll be here tomorrow at the same time. And if you're able to stick around for a few minutes, we always love to have a conversation here. And so, Julie, I want to invite you back in. And thank you. That was such a rich practice. And, you did it from such minimal stuff, right? Just the opening verse of the of the parsha, really. A little assist from Rashi there, but really, there's so much just in the notion of light, right? And practice, and the notion and the idea of lo shina, of not changing the practice and then illuminating the light. And I'm curious. I'm curious to ask everybody here. What your experience was of that practice. Getting a lot of wonderful positive feedback, but things that you found in the light, or difficulties that you might have experienced. Julie, you so skillfully talked about those moments in meditation when, as we do, our minds wander, and then we can just gently sort of bring that back, and invite ourselves back. So I'm curious, for you, in your own practice, is the metaphor of light in particular. That's where this parsha sort of takes us. Is that something you work with a lot, and how that comes up for you? And you didn't do your music today. You gave a visual sort of experience. I'm curious about that.
Yes, it's really this idea of how much can I stand to know? And so I'm thinking of this light. So I know Sam sometimes talks about like the searchlight. So there's that light, but this is a candle light. Searchlight feels sometimes a little bit unforgiving. But we can also, we get to choose the light and we get to dial the light up or dial the light down depending on where we are, how we are. And it's really this, and sometimes I hear people talk about it as unpeeling the onion. I'm using the light in that sort of the penumbra of the light, of how much ground this light actually illuminates, as my metaphor of how much can I stand to know before I shut down again, and how much can I hold with compassionately without giving into, not giving into, that's not the right word, but without my own awareness sort of turning me away from it. Like I was talking about with the desk thing,
Yeah.
the habits of our mind are so slippery, so tricky, that they turn our attention away before we even know it. We don't even get a chance to see it. It's such like, here I am in front of the refrigerator again. How'd that happen? And it is, as we practice over and over, we start to catch on to our own habits. And so I'm using that metaphor of, a little more is coming into the light. I know what I do when I sit down at this desk. If it's too clean, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I haven't been doing my work. And just know how that works. Cleaning my desk is fine. Doing my work is really good too. Knowing that like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do it, even though I notice this feeling coming up of it might be hard. Or I'm concerned, or I'm anxious, or I'm, all of those things.
There have been a number of questions about the deaths that are coming up in the chat that clearly resonated. And it's interesting, when you were just talking, Julie, I was thinking like, okay, I mean, the image that comes to mind for me is a Shulchan Aruch, is a set table, right? Though in a different sense than a dining table. I mean, I also have a desk that's a little messy in front of me, right? Many of us who are sitting at desks do. And the question of, what is it set for, right? And there's good writing practices that, like, good writers have, clean, organized desks. But there's a question about, someone had here, Leah had the question, often when I head to another part of the house to do something that I pass reminds me of something else I need to do, and I stop to do it because I'm afraid I'll forget it. And is it better to do that, or just, keep my focus on my original task? I'm curious what you would say. I mean, first of all, I don't think, Leah, that we're ever going to tell you what's better to do, right? You're going to determine that. But I think that this, it's that question is one that comes up also, and it goes to your question of when I sit down at the desk and I see, all right, so now take us into where you go with that.
Yeah. So it is not about which is better, for sure, but to know how my mind does this stuff. Like, as I'm going into the room, and I noticed in that comment you said something, I'm afraid that I'm going to forget. That's what we're honing in on. That took just a second, that we didn't think was the topic. We didn't think that was a thing. We thought the thing was getting a thing or doing a thing. No. Notice that fear that came up and how it redirected you. It literally redirected you. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about. That's why I practice, to notice what is motivating me when I don't even see it. And it's so slippery and tricky to see. It's so smooth at redirecting my attention. Mm-hmm. And so that light, it starts out as a little teeny light. I think I know what I'm thinking, but I don't. Mm-hmm. Turns out I don't. And so I come back again and again. And the desk thing, it's like, I go, I'm old. I've done it many, many times, and there have been many scripts about why I should clean, or why I'm terrible because I'm cleaning, or, all the things, all the opinions about it. And it turns out that it maybe, and this is the truth I'm sitting with in this moment, maybe I'm just anxious or worried about how my work's going to turn out. Maybe I can just know that. And when I know that that's all it is, it's just those feelings, I'm going to sit down and write, or I'm going to clean. They're both, it's not one is right or one is wrong. It's just, let me know how they drive me.
Yeah. Right. And to be able to approach it with, bring awareness to that as well. Right. It's always striking to me, when we think about the menorah, the image of the menorah in the temple, right, is not in a public place. It's actually in a private place. It's not, it's not like everybody sees it, and so what's it illuminating? And we come back over and over, to illuminate that, not the thing that's necessarily visible to everyone, right? But even in our own minds, it's fascinating to think about that.
And I want to bring in one more thing about that, and that is the part of the stuff that is hard to know, because I don't know about you, but I spend way too much time doom scrolling on Twitter, and certainly on SCOTUS Twitter, and there's a lot going on in the world that is very hard to know, and makes me feel very constricted and just kind of ruminating. And yet I can use this light, breathe in the light, to be able to know that, and know, what are the limits, what I can do, what I can't do, but that I can stand to know it, that I can stand and say, oh, what comes up for me with that? Some fear, some anxiety, and then bringing compassion to that. But first I have to know it. Sometimes it shows up as anger, at first, or a feeling of self-righteousness. And that energy is great, but let me know what it is and where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm. Laura had a question here about this determining, how do we determine how much truth we can bear, right? And the question of sitting with anxiety, doubt, and despair, or beyond, when we get to a point where we feel like that might be beyond what we can actually handle, possibly, I think might be part of the question. I wonder about that.
Such a great question. And that is what we get to practice with, because we get to see, how does it operate in me? If I shine the big searchlight, does it send me under my covers? Mm-hmm. How much can I bear to know about my own self, about the world, that still allows me to operate as the open-hearted, awake to my life person that I intend to be? So it's not a right or wrong. It's just notice, how does it really operate in me? So this is not a quote to put up on your wall and use for inspiration or anything. It's really that, how does it work in me right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting also, someone asked a question of, we're instructed to say the prayers with newness each day. What do you do to make your daily sit feel new each day? And I'm struck again by the image of lighting the lamp, right? Happens every day, right? And it's new, and it's a new act of creation every day. And so that it might be the opposite. It's like, how does it come to feel old in the first place, right? Actually, you could turn it around. It's always new. So what is it that makes it feel old to us? Possibly is another way to turn it inside out.
Once again, we get to see where these things live in us, where it is in me. The part of me that says, oh, this is boring, I don't want to do it, that's somewhere around anxiety, worry, oh, I have something more important to do. And if I know where that lives in me, if I recognize it, I'm familiar with it, then I can choose whether I pay attention to that or not. So we get to become better at redirecting our own awareness in ways that are wholesome. And conversely, I get to know, where is that little pilot light in me? Where is that as if it were new? Like, what's the image that shows up? What is the memory? What is the embodied sense of, the difference between surprise or anxiety? They both have a little bit of that lit up feeling. But I get to learn where they are in me, find them in me, and then, to the best of my ability, direct my attention in the direction that's going to be useful at that moment. Mm-hmm. Or just know, you know what? I am beyond that right now. I cannot redirect my attention. Let me just bring compassion. Let me just bring compassion to me in the kind of stuck place that I am right now. Let me breathe, because one thing that I do know is that will change.
Yeah, which takes you also to your other meaning of Shina, right? Lishanos, to change, right? And so both to repeat and to change, which is, it's one of those words that means itself in its opposite, right? Fascinating. So many good things, good comments here from a lot of people. They clearly really needed this today. So thank you, Julie. It was really, really wonderful. We'll look forward to having you back again, and we'll get you a different ritual object to talk about than the menorah. We can, maybe we can do a series next time.
My goal is to get past the first 4 verses of a parsha. It's
you just got to start in the middle. There you go.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks, everybody. So good to see you again, and we'll be back here tomorrow.